quick note, this video has absolutely no script, so if it sounds like a rambling madman at some points, that's because it is. You clicked on it. This is your fault. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what a freaking time to be a Thomas fan, isn't it? I mean, at the time of recording just yesterday on May 12th, that was the 80th anniversary of the Railway series. And I totally had a project planned that was supposed to, go live with that, but it kind of didn't work. We'll talk about that later. So, kind of besides that point, I don't know if you guys have heard, or maybe saw the 300 new comments I got on a 3-year-old video talking about the same thing. Kind of just out of nowhere, Mattel put the pilot for Thomas and Friends on YouTube, something that I kind of thought I would never see. I don't know, I kind of just figured that was something that was lost to time, something that would never be seen by my eyes, and here we are. Not only seen by my eyes, but it's, again, just on YouTube. You can go watch the pilot for Thomas and Friends that, again, has been lost for so long. Not only that, it's restored, it's in 4K, and again, you can just go watch it. It's linked in the description. And I don't really plan this video to be a long one. I'm pretty sure you could assume how I feel about the pilot. A lot more than I thought I would. I was kind of in the field of not really caring, or I would have said that a couple years ago, and here it is. I care very much. This is something that's really cool. The kind of depressing mindset of it's probably nothing that interesting was proven very wrong when we saw the actual result. I honestly would argue the pilot is better than the final episode, or what we got in terms of actual release, and I kind of figured that'd be something I'd talk about today. Don't expect this to be like a proper reaction or anything like that. I sadly didn't record the first time I saw the Thomas and Friends pilot. So it would be fake if I did remake. I'm not gonna do that, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, I guess that's it. Let's just talk about it, and why I think it's definitely a lot better than the final version of Down the Mine. Right off the bat, I have to argue the atmosphere is something that's very different. In a normal Thomas and Friends, it feels very real, if that makes any sense. Like it's rooted in realism with everything they did, whether it's the details on the engines, the way the engines operated, the stories they told with them, which were all Railway series stories in the beginning, but that's another point. I really wouldn't argue there's anything in this pilot that feels similar. I mean, maybe the models, I guess, but again, if you know the final Thomas models like I do, it still just feels oddly different enough to not be Thomas, if that makes any sense. Like, let's take a look at him. He has no lamp irons. He has a much more whimsical face, or a more whimsy-like expressions, I would argue. They feel a lot more, if not Railway series, inspired. A lot more cartoonish, and that's something I really like, not only on Thomas, but also on Gordon. I've seen the pilot Gordon get a lot of criticism recently, and a lot of praise. I'm kind of more on the side of praise, because this is just such a weird, it's just so whimsical, is it not? I don't know if this makes any sense, but it feels softer. Like Gordon looks softer, he feels kinder. That feels more like the big engine to me than this angry blue banana, you know what I'm saying? I don't know, it definitely has a more illustrative or cartoonish feel, which is something I really like, and is a very big contrast, again, to the final episode. I'm fairly certain that Gordon model doesn't even work, because the only shot we see of him pulling trucks is, he's being pushed by a hand. So maybe it's just some, I don't know, fucking thrown together mess that just barely works and kind of resembles a Reginald Payne illustration, you know what I'm saying? I don't know, there's just something that I really like about those Pac-Man eyes. They feel fitting for the Thomas models. I don't like the fact that they have actual lips, though. Like, that, Disney animations don't have lips that look that good. That is, wow, that's some good detail. Unnecessary fucking detail. I mean, we could probably spend hours talking about the differences between, this Gordon and the final Gordon, this Thomas and the final Thomas. We're not gonna do that in this video, because there's a million things to find, and I don't feel like I would find them all, maybe in a future one. But one thing pointed out by RWS NWR12 on Twitter that I find really interesting and kind of have to share, just because it's, again, kind of cool, If you look at the back of this Thomas, he has wiper pickups, which, if you've ever seen an LGB train, those are exactly the pickups on those. Again, is this not just the most cool, thrown together, weird, probably not very great, but I mean, it's still cool to see, Thomas you've ever seen? This probably sucked to make work, but you get what I'm trying to say. It's just so fun to see. Another thing I would argue that the pilot did really well were just some shots being better than, arguably the final. There are some that are kind of awkward, like when Thomas falls into the mine. He kind of, that literally just looks like a toy train falling, like, 2 centimeters, you know what I'm saying? But what about right before that? The effect where we see the gravel or ballast start to fall into the ground. That just looked so good, so clean, you know what I'm saying? And I don't think that's something we see in the final.
"Come back!" yelled his driver.
Is that not just so much more atmospheric, you know what I'm saying, and just a better shot in general? Also, shout out the off-roading plank wagon. I wonder what his story is. Does he have, like, tires on or something? Now, sadly, you don't get the same shots of, like, you know, Gordon running down the branch line to come save Thomas or anything like that. You kind of just, again, get Gordon pushed into frame with what I assume is a hand, if what we saw before is to be, you know, carried on. And right after that, what I would argue is the second awkward shot where Thomas is saved from the mine. You know, they say that it's a struggle, or that it's difficult to get Thomas out of that mine.
But at last he was free.
Where was the Can you point it out to me? You know what I'm saying? Like, that just does not look, that did not look difficult at all. That was, I would argue there's a bit more strain, you know, in the final result. And of course, I have to mention the dialogue, which at the end is a little bit different, and I would argue the pilot, again, does way, way better. Here's an example.
I'm in disgrace too, said Thomas. Why, so you are, Thomas. We're both in disgrace. Shall we form an alliance? An ally? What was it? Asked Thomas. An alliance, Thomas. United we stand, together we fall, said Gordon grandly.
I'm in disgrace. So am I, said Thomas. Why, so you are, Thomas. Shall we form an alliance? You help me and I'll help you.
You know, that really wasn't an example. That kind of just was what it was. You get what I'm trying to say. So where exactly does that land us? Well, number one, I was just straight wrong. We actually did see the pilot. That was something I'm pretty sure I'm on record saying I didn't think we would ever see. Kind of eating my words there, but I'm happily doing it, you know what I'm saying? Two, I feel like everybody in the fandom got the same bit of inspiration, so you could probably assume, and would assume correctly, that I am working on a pilot Thomas model, or at least Thomas right now. I kind of want to make the Gordon at some point. Right now I'm using the Play-Rail Thomas, or a spare Play-Rail Thomas. And, you know, that's always fun and all. Everybody loves Thomas. I'm a huge fan of Pilot Gordon. I don't care what anybody says. He might be awkward, he might be weird, he might look fucked, but you know what? It's cute, it's adorable. It's something I really seem to enjoy, you know what I'm saying? So expect a Pilot Gordon following him at some point. I just kind of have to figure out how I plan to make that one. Again, not to go backwards, but that first shot we see of Gordon, where he pulls in with the freight cars or the troublesome trucks, that to me is just, it's just so cool. You know what I'm saying? I would love to replicate that in something simple, and what's more simple than Trackmaster or Tomy or Play-Rail? And also, you know, I kind of have a kid on the way, so maybe this is the smarter idea anyway. And three, I still have to stand on it. I would argue the pilot definitely showed this episode or story quite a bit better, or at least in better ways. You know, the final did have some things that it excelled in, like some shots just not being so awkward, and, you know, maybe getting a bit more Gordon, showing that that model actually worked too, but I don't know. I feel like the pilot is more engaging, or it tickles my brain more in ways of what I wished Thomas was, or wish Thomas is, you know what I'm saying? It just kind of has a feel to it, or an atmosphere, and that makes this episode so much more unique than the final, in my opinion, and something I personally would argue makes me prefer the pilot a little bit more than the final. But again, that's just me. I'm sure there are plenty of people who disagree with that and have their own arguments, and you know, feel free to comment those down below. I would love to know what you guys think. Tell me, how do you feel about Pilot Gordon? Do you think he's a whimsical, adorable little thing like I do? Or do you think he's like some weird spawn of Satan galloping sausage motherfucker? You get what I'm trying to say. I honestly could see both. Both are valid. You know, just take away the lips and I think he's perfect. You can't take away the lips, though. You can't, once you see those, you kind of can't unsee them, can you? I don't know. Ladies and gentlemen, we got the Thomas and Friends pilot. 10 out of 10. Just 10 out of 10. Something I really am very blown away by. And again, we also have the 80th anniversary project, which sadly is delayed, but, you know, here's a little bit of a sneak peek. Yeah, let me just say the Tomy stuff is definitely getting a bit more unique. I'll leave it there for now. It's totally been revealed on Twitter and Patreon and probably Instagram at this point too if you go look there. But a video coming soon. It's Arlesdale but in a Tomy scale. What the fuck? Don't spoil it. They didn't know that. You didn't know. Oh, dude, come on. You know, that could have been a surprise. Sorry, my bad. I'll leave, dickhead. And with all that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching this, again, I don't know, ramble, just a somewhat review of, I guess, the Thomas and Friends pilot and why I think it's a little bit more interesting than what we got in the final results. Be sure to comment what you think down below, and ladies and gentlemen, always remember to carry chapstick, because if you don't, you'll end up looking like these two. It's just not a good look. You get what I'm trying to say?
Either subscribe, donate, or get the fuck out.
Bye-bye. See you soon.